Here at the Melanin Initiative, we simplify medical information into language you can understand. We create a safe space for you to ask your questions and share a nursing perspective. Today, we're joined by our licensed therapist and private practice owner, Kelsey Wilson, for a powerful conversation on how trauma shows up in the lives of Black and Brown communities. And the most surprising way, it's been passed down even without us knowing. If you've ever wondered, why do I feel this way? And where is it really coming from? This episode is for you. If you're new here, welcome to the Melanin Initiative. I'm Dr. Kimberly Madison, a doctorally prepared nurse practitioner and one of your co-hosts here at the Melanin Initiative, along with Alicia and Geraldine, who sends her love in her absence. We're a health literacy podcast. When we say health literacy, we're talking about your ability to obtain information, to understand that information, and then to use it to manage your health and advocate for others. We have two missions here. The first is to promote that health literacy, both amongst the public and our peers. The second is to elevate the expertise of nurses, to bring awareness to all the diverse career opportunities, and to let all of our clinicians know all the ways that they can leverage their expertise, both as clinicians and entrepreneurs. If you haven't already, this is your chance to subscribe. Leave us a thumbs up, share, like, and give us 5 stars on the Apple and Spotify podcast. Every time you interact with our platform like that, it shows the algorithm on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that this information is important so that when people like you look for topics like this, we'll show up higher in their search results. Remember, this show is for educational purposes only. The opinions expressed here are our opinions alone. They are not a representation of any of our affiliations. If you think you might be experiencing a medical emergency, you should seek medical attention and medical guidance from your healthcare provider. If you think you might be having a physical emergency, you should call 911. If you or someone you know might be having a mental health emergency, you can call 988 or text 741 741. Our guest today is someone who brings both clinical expertise and deep empathy to the conversation around trauma and healing. Kelsey Wilson is a licensed clinical social worker and the founder of Hela Psychotherapy, a private practice committed to helping individuals, especially women, process trauma, rebuild self-trust, and reclaim their emotional wellness. With over 6 years of experience in community mental health and 2 years in private practice, Kelsey has become known for her culturally attuned, compassion-first approach to healing. Her work focuses on making mental health approachable, especially in communities where trauma has been normalized and therapy remains stigmatized. Whether she's guiding someone through childhood wounds, helping mothers forgive themselves, or teaching parents how to talk to teens about mental health, Kelsey centers one truth. Healing doesn't happen in isolation. It starts with conversation. You can find her on Instagram, and today she's here to help us begin where we are. It's my honor to welcome back the Melanin Initiative, the one and only Kelsey Wilson.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be back and to be talking with you all about such an important topic. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen you personally, and the audience. By the time at the time that we're recording this, it will have been a while. So before we get into our icebreaker, you want to just catch up us on how practice is going?
Yeah, so practice is going really well. Actually, just updated our name. We are now Hela Psychotherapy. And so that name change will be going across our website and our social media handles here soon. And we'll be bringing on a new clinician soon. So if anyone's looking for a new therapist, definitely look out on our website for updates related to a new clinician that'll be joining us.
Wonderful. And you're still seeing patients in Virginia and DC, correct?
Yes, yes. So seeing clients who are in Virginia and DC, largely virtually, but we also offer therapy intensives for clients who want to come to Reston to do extended sessions, 90-minute, 2-hour, 3-hour sessions, single incident trauma.
Someone's device is beeping in the background. Do one of you all have something on?
No,
No, a phone or anything? Am I the only one who hears it?
I do hear it, but I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Okay, we'll just continue. All right. So let's do our 5 questions in 5 minutes. Alicia, you want to go through that with her?
Sure. So, Kelsey, what's the best thing that never happened to you?
Best thing that never happened to me. Hmm. I would say the fact that even in times of like adversity, or even at times where, you know, we've had so many world changes lately, always just continuing to be persistent, and that I never gave up, despite all the things that are going on. This is a really busy time for clinicians, as you all know, healthcare providers, with all the world changes that are happening. I think the fact that we're all out here just still trying to help people and provide quality care, I think I'm just glad that, we never give up in that process.
I
Hmm.
love that.
Mhm.
So, what is the next big idea you want to be a part of?
Next big idea that I want to be a part of. Mm, I would say, so of course in my practice, I focus on trauma. And there's a lot of people out here who are experiencing trauma related to new job changes, changes with the world that we never would have seen, especially here in the States. These are unprecedented times. And so I just really want to be a part of that initiative, being able to help a lot of workers who are going through a lot of job loss and job changes. It's a lot of trauma happening related to jobs right now, people changing states and changing their living conditions and things like that. So I really want to be out in the public and making sure people know that there is help out there, for people who are going through a lot of life transitions right now that just were never expected.
Right. So, what would you say is the most important thing you've learned about communication?
Most important thing that I've learned about communication, I would say that it evolves, right? So I think, a lot of times we think we have one communication style and that's the way that it'll be for our entire life. But as we get older and as we continue to learn and grow, our communication changes. And so that's one thing that I've learned that I personally take in and try to implement in my personal life, but also with my clients that I work with too.
I love that. Who do you want to give their flowers?
I would say I want to give my flowers to all the therapists who are out there right now trying to help their clients with trauma. Um, a lot of therapists who do this work experience vicarious trauma, and it's important to make sure that they have help too. And so in my practice, I make sure to help a lot of helping professionals, whether that be therapists, nurses, other helping professionals who are going through a lot. And so I want to make sure that I give my flowers to them.
Oh, yes, helping those that help others. I love that.
I love that you mentioned vicarious trauma. We just aired an episode on that with our one of our newest additions to the Mel Initiative, illustrious list of mental health professionals, Kirby Williams, right here in the DMV as well. She sees patients in Richmond, Virginia. And yeah, she was kind enough to come on and talk to us about it. And we were so happy, always honored when we can dedicate episodes to our peers in the industry.
Definitely. Yes. Saw that episode dropped. I have to reach out to her to like collaborate.
Yeah, and while we're on it, let's see. I'm going to go down the list. Hopefully, I don't forget anyone. We have the Dr. Ani Atabang out there in Maryland. Michael Whiteside, he sees patients in Virginia and Indiana. He might, yeah, I don't think he sees people in Virginia. We'll be welcoming Dr. Takesha Leonard from New York. Her episode will actually, by the time you're seeing this, it aired Labor Day, and she talked to us about ADHD in children and told her own story, which actually started with addiction, which is what Michael talked to us about. And I think I can't remember anyone else, but they're in the description box. We've linked our whole playlist. We have a whole playlist of mental health professionals, and so let's get into our case study.
Okay.
And so today, I want to introduce to our audience Simrit. She's a 49-year-old Black woman who came to therapy experiencing classic signs of burnout, chronic fatigue, and deep-seated anxiety. She is caught in the sandwich generation, caring for both her aging parents and her teenage daughter, all while managing a demanding healthcare job where she's often the only woman of color in leadership meetings. Simrit described feeling invisible at work, despite her competence, and perpetually guilty at home for never feeling like she was doing enough. In therapy, she revealed that growing up, she was taught to be accommodating and strong, to never complain or ask for help. Her mother, an immigrant nurse, had survived years of discrimination by enduring in silence. Simrit internalized the belief that her value came from her capacity to endure, not from her right to be seen. And her story isn't an isolated one. According to the National Survey of American Life, on average, nearly 1 in 8 Black women will experience PTSD in their lifetime. Kelsey today will help us unpack the story behind that statistic.
Yes, definitely. So,
Oh,
Simran's
Kelsey.
It's okay, Kelsey. So, Kelsey, thank you for being here. So, let's
yes,
start with Simret's story.
yeah.
She's a high performer, a leader, and a caregiver. For someone like her, where does burnout end and potential trauma begin? And how do we even start to tell the difference?
Oh, yeah. So, Simran's story is not unlike some of the cases that I work with on a regular basis in my practice. Um, Burnout and trauma, there's sometimes there's overlap, but it's important that the public knows that they are two different areas that people need to kind of be aware of. Burnout can happen gradually as you're working in a job or you're doing a role that pulls a lot from you. And so your energy gradually starts to go down. It can take some time to recover from burnout, depending on the severity of the burnout. But trauma, whether it's sexual trauma, workplace trauma, institutional systemic discrimination trauma, it looks a little bit different than burnout because of the experiences that a person goes through. So that kind of plays a role in how the symptoms play out. A lot of times, trauma for people manifests as like anxiety, depression, or other chronic health issues that show up before they recognize that it's a result of the trauma that they've been through.
Before we move on, can you just, how do you define high performer?
High performer, yeah. So a lot of times it looks like someone who's um, constantly at the front of the line, like getting their work done. It seems like they're quick to the answers. They have it all figured out on the surface. But for some people, it's masking some of the things that are going on underneath, like perfectionism, anxiety, fear of people judging them or not understanding. So they want to make sure that they're showing up a certain way. And it can have a really big impact on your body when you're constantly on that go mode like that. And so I like to provide that education to some of my clients who come and see me because a lot of times it starts to show up in chronic fatigue, difficulty sleeping, and just like other health issues that show up.
I think we can all relate either personally, directly, or we all either are that person or we work with those people.
Yeah.
And I think our profession demands it,
Absolutely.
to be quite honest. So I want to key in on that feeling Simmer has about being invisible at work. Another thing we can all relate to. She's competent. She's in a leadership role. She has all the degrees, all the certifications. She has over a decade of experience, and yet she still feels unseen. How much of that is tied to the unique pressure of being the only one in the room?
I would say a lot. And I feel like a lot of women of color go through that experience of feeling invisible in the workspace, even though they feel like they're doing all the things. So I think it's important to be in therapy to kind of unpack some of those things because a lot of times it's not even about the work that they're doing because they're doing an excellent job. But it's about underlying, microaggressions that might be happening in the workplace. It might be about people not acknowledging the work that they're doing, but they're acknowledging others. And so it's like some underlying discrimination things that might be happening that aren't as blatant, and it's not as like, oh, it's obviously this, but it's underneath the surface, coupled with other systemic things that are going on in society, especially now, that are compounding the chronic stress that they're going through.
That's an interesting point. I think there's the thought of feeling like you're the only one in the room, and then also feeling like you have to show up a certain way to be accepted. So,
Mm.
yeah, very interesting stuff we're talking about today. So,
And I love that you mentioned you're doing a good job because you said it really quickly, right? But there's a lot of us who don't hear that,
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
even from people who look like us.
right.
Yeah.
For sure. I think that's why community is so important, right? Like being around other women who are maybe going through the same thing or who are also like working professionals, like finding community where you can hear that more is so important. As well as going to therapy to just kind of hear that validation too,
Mhm.
and figure out like, okay, how can I get into spaces where I can feel more heard and seen? And is this the right fit job for me? Because sometimes we have to pivot too and do some different work where maybe the culture is in line with what we feel like we're in the space for and things like that.
And I think in that room, not just people who are going through it, but people who have already overcome, right? So we're talking about our older generation, maybe even our retired clinicians. We kind of forget about them, right? That they're still there. That knowledge is still there.
Hmm.
And then who haven't gone through it yet, they don't even know what's coming, right? And so sometimes we might feel like we're stuck, like we've tried everything and nothing's happening, but we can still feel like the lessons we've learned, the trauma we've gone through personally, if we can just give some advice or a listening ear, some tools, to someone else, sometimes it helps us get through our own situation and feel like, okay, you know what, I went through that, and now I see there's a purpose. I can turn that pain into purpose for someone else.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mentorship is so important.
Hmm.
So, Kelsey, let's dive into a different segment of the case study. So, what about the generational piece? Her mother survived being silent. How does that inherited blueprint of strength as silence show up in Simrat's life today, both at home and in the boardroom?
Absolutely. Some of those messages that we learn as a kid translate into how we show up at work, into how we show up with our families, into how we navigate the community. And so, if she learned a lot of those lessons from her mom around like resiliency, and I put air quotes around resiliency because sometimes those messages can keep us from getting the help that we need, of like, oh, I have to be resilient, I have to be strong. So, even when you are showing signs of needing help, maybe you don't get it as quickly as you should, or maybe you don't get it at all because you believe that you're supposed to have it
Right.
all figured out, right? So some of those messages show up like that. Um, and in her case, like Simmer's case, she did get help, which is amazing. But sometimes that can even show up in therapy, right? When you're trying to process previous core beliefs, and a core belief is something that you carry inside of yourself, whether it's something that you told yourself or that other people told you that you kind of hold inside. Um, and it shows up in the way that you talk to people and how you navigate the world. So sometimes it can impact the way that we navigate treatment too. Um, you know, I do a lot of trauma work and traumatic invalidation, which is where you feel unheard, or you feel like people in the world or in your household like haven't fully listened to you. It can really impact your self-esteem, and it can impact the way that uh, navigate therapy too, when you're trying to have conversations with your therapist around what it is that you believe about yourself, or trying to do those positive affirmations. Sometimes there can be a block because of some of those traumatic experiences that you've gone through, or those messages that you've heard.
Hmm.
Uh,
For our audience, that feeling of your worth being tied to what you do for others is so common. For everyone listening or watching right now, I want you to drop a yes in the comments if you've ever felt that pressure. Let's just acknowledge it together. Kelsey, let's talk about some of the myths. Why does someone as accomplished and competent as Simran feel intense guilt when she even thinks about resting or prioritizing her own needs? What would you say to her?
Yeah, so I would say to her that I would first validate the fact that a lot of women feel that way. Um, and that sometimes, like, there's societal messages that kind of prompt us to feel that way too. As a woman, especially as a woman of color, we have to work. No matter if you're tired, no matter if you feel like you need to take a rest. Sometimes even people feel guilty about taking their paid time off if they work a job that offers that benefit, because we're believed we're always supposed to show up and do our best work and provide help for everyone. But one thing I'd like to tell my clients is, like, we can't show up as our best if we're not taking that rest is not something that's like nice to have. Like, we actually need it. And so I always encourage my clients to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. And even on those days where they're feeling guilty for doing so, I remind them that, like, if you don't take that time to rest, like, your body will sometimes force you to, because we can get sick because we're not taking enough rest. Whether that's illnesses that show up, or sometimes chronic burnout will show up and make us rest for days, or other things will show up in terms of how we present ourselves at work, like brain fog, um, forgetting things, our concentration's lacking, just to name a few.
Yeah, you mentioned society, and yeah, we see it, right? The superwoman complex, super mom, black excellence, strong black woman. That's what's underlying those words, right? And I love that you brought up PTO. And yeah, it is a thing, right? Especially in nursing, right? Because of the way, especially if you are working kind of those shift hours
Yeah.
where you can work, maybe 3 days, 4 days a week. You don't really need to take PTO in your head because you have so much off time. And people end up accumulating so much. Sometimes they can give it away. And really, especially as a provider now, it's really pretend time off because you still have your phone, you still have your email you have to check,
Mhm.
you still have patients that are emailing scripts that need to be filled. And then I wonder sometimes if you are the only one in the room, you might feel like you can't take time off. Like you have to be there. And yesterday, a good friend of ours, she's actually been on the show before, high performer, mother, huge business, just finished grad school, going into another program, having her own physical health challenges. And she's like, I was like, look, this is a sign. God wants you to rest. She's like, what does that even look like?
Mm.
Yeah. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I would say, taking that time for yourself is so crucial. Um, we're here to help serve the community. We're here to help other people, but we can't do that if we're not showing up and resting and taking care of ourselves. And so sometimes it looks like sitting with your therapist to come up with a plan of what that looks like. Because when you tell someone who's a overperformer or high achiever, like, oh, you have to take your PTO, it's like, okay, well, how do we even get there? Because that's like going from step A to like Z, like so fast. So sometimes it looks like, okay, over the next 12 months, how much PTO do you have? How much time will you lose if you don't take it? If you're working for a company. Okay, I'm going to lose 5 weeks if I don't take this leave right now. Okay, so let's look at the next 12 months and let's see if we can carve out at least 3 days over the next 3 months that you're going to take off, or a week. When can you do that? And really doing those baby steps to kind of put it on paper. And then we actually go in and we put it on our calendar so that it's not just like something that creeps up on us and we didn't actually do it. And then when we get closer to those days, okay, what are we going to do? Are we actually going to take a trip? Are we going to go to the spa? Are we going to get our nails done? We're going to go exercise, work out, like really having a proactive plan of what that's going to look like to rest. Because otherwise, the time comes up and we sit there and sometimes spin our head around work coming up in 7 days and we don't do anything.
Hi, I'm Alicia from the Melanin Initiative podcast. Our mission is twofold. One, to simplify complex health information so you feel empowered to ask questions, educated on how to manage your health, and confident to navigate the healthcare system. And two, to elevate the expertise of nurses, spotlight the diverse career opportunities within the healthcare industry, and inform our peers how to leverage their expertise as clinicians and entrepreneurs. In less than 2 years, we've grown to over 50,000 views and 1,000 downloads, with an international audience spanning the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and more. Our engaged listeners are professionals, entrepreneurs aged 25 to 44 who value authentic, impactful content. Want to connect with this dynamic audience? Advertise with us. Send in your 1-minute video ad and let's amplify your brand. Email tmi.melanin@gmail.com for rates and details. Let's work together.
And that fear when you get back, you have a whole week worth pile to catch up on. And sometimes that's just like draining enough. It's like, I don't want to do that. So yeah, let's give our friends some ideas. So at the time that we're recording this, I'm preparing for my annual sabbatical in August.
Awesome.
And people always ask, what is that? What does that even mean? What do you even do? And you know what I said, and what I told my friend yesterday is it's whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I don't take any meetings, right? I don't do any, this is actually, today's my last day recording. Things like that. Maybe go on some more dates and, spend time outside. And lately, I have my phone is on mute 95% of the time. Some days I have do not disturb days. It's completely off. A lot more time in silence. Maybe not checking, social media for the first 6 hours of the day. It really can be whatever. Spending more time with friends, catching up with family, sleeping in. Like that's so it could be anything, but those are what I do. You ladies want to share some things?
What do I do? Definitely not check email. So I'm actually preparing myself for a PTO that I don't take enough. But but I told my assistant on last week, I was like, I won't be checking emails. So don't expect me to see anything that's coming through. I'm getting off Teams. I'm getting off Outlook. You're going to have to text me if it's an emergency because I'm not paying attention. And even then, I may not respond right away. Being more intentional about, doing what I want to do. So I, like Kimberly said, sleeping in or going to the gym or eating what I want or getting sun, spa, my nails, the stuff that I'm like, oh, I'll get to eventually. I'm
Yeah.
going to do that when I want to. It's mostly doing what I want, doing what feels good. I mean, that's what me and my friends say, we want to do what feels good. And whatever that means on that day, that's what we're going to do. But it just has to feel good for us and, no pressure.
Mm. Yeah, I love. And actually, this last time I took a trip, I said, you know what? Next time I go, I'm gonna put that out of the office on my email, even my personal email, because it was filled. It was filled up. And I like a day without an agenda.
Yes.
For those of us who live by the calendar,
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
just go with the flow.
A day with no agenda. That's like, what do I do? What is my day?
Kelsey?
Yeah, for me, I would say it's being outside, spending as much time in the sun as possible. Those of us who work from home, like it's so
Oh,
important to make sure that you're getting that sunlight, and moving your body too. So I like to go on the trails. If I can go for a trip, I definitely love to do that. Traveling to see family, or going on like a vacation trip. So those are my things, and listening to like some audiobooks, some good audiobooks as well. Yeah,
yeah. Thanks for sharing.
yeah.
So all of this is making me think about being accommodating and strong is often being praised, how it's being praised, especially for Black women in professional spaces. So Kelsey, how can this celebrated survival strategy actually be a hidden danger?
Yeah. So, because it's often celebrated to continue to work, 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 we often don't recognize when our body is starting to show us signs that it needs to slow down before it's too late. And so, chronic health issues can sometimes creep in, autoimmune diseases can sometimes creep in, and we don't even know that it's because of like overworking, because of unprocessed trauma that's it's being stored in our body that needs to be processed. Um, and so if we're not careful and constantly checking out, okay, let me check my energy levels, let me do a body scan. And for people who don't know, that's when you're checking yourself from the top of your head and just noticing how you feel to the bottom of your feet, right? I always encourage my clients to do a body scan, once a day, if they can't, once a week, but just notice how you're feeling. Sometimes that can be an indicator. If you're noticing that you're having tension in certain areas of your body, like your shoulders, a lot of women carry tension in their stomach or in their hips. That might be a sign that you should get your physical done every year, of course, but also maybe that you need to go talk to a therapist to try to work out, why am I carrying so much tension in my body?
Yeah, and we do that in yoga too. That's actually, I'm glad you even brought that up. That's actually something you could easily do every day.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of, yeah, be present.
Present.
So if Simrat's value system is so deeply tied to this endurance and performance, how do we even begin to help her and women like her untangle this intrinsic worth from daily output?
Definitely. So, two of the interventions that I use often in my practice are EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, and I also use parts work. And these are two really great therapies that help with processing trauma. So, EMDR, we are looking at past traumatic memories that are either pretty presently showing up or they might be kind of buried in there, and we need to do some reprocessing work to figure out what those memories are to specifically target those so that we can bring down the distress that's showing up in our day to day. Parts work, which is a separate intervention that I use, helps people to look at different parts of themselves that are showing up and impacting them. So maybe there's a younger part of them that went through this traumatic experience of hearing these negative messages around, like, you always have to show up even when you're tired. You're not allowed to rest, or, you know, no matter what you do, it'll never be enough. So, really looking at those parts of ourselves that believe those core beliefs and reprocessing those, belief systems so that we can today say, wow, I am worthy of rest. I do deserve good things. I'm allowed to say no and set boundaries with people, even though my previous parts of myself have told me that I'm not allowed to do that.
Ooh, I think you hit a big one. Boundaries.
And saying no.
Yeah, oh, yes, and saying no.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask our TMI family listening, what is one myth about strength that you had to unlearn on your own journey? Share it in the comments. Your story could be the permission someone else needs to hear.
Yeah, so important. And what the thing the new vocabulary word that you just
Yes, I was
introduced,
thinking about that too.
can you spell that?
Yes, EMDR or parts work, or which part?
Actually,
Part.
we know EMDR because Kelsey was kind enough to come on with us last year and talk about it. So you'll find that in our mental health playlist. And I do remember the other therapists. It was Jade and Aubrey. They came on and talked to us about somatic therapy
Oh,
and sexual health, also part of our mental health playlist. So we know all about EMDR. We invite our audience to go and watch that episode and all of your episodes. But the other one, I don't know if you're saying
Part.
parts or
yes, parts work. Parts work
like
is
PRTS.
yes,
Oh, okay.
yes. Parts work. It's a part of IFS, internal family systems theory, and it
Kelsey,
focuses on
IFS.
yes, IFS,
Okay.
internal
I
family
need to take
systems.
note. I need to take notes when Kelsey comes.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a great therapy. A lot of people find it really helpful, especially when we have younger parts of ourselves that, um, are telling us messages about ourselves, or we have traumatic memories that maybe happened at the age of 10, 15, 20 that we need to go back and take a look at so that we can, turn down the distress around some of those memories that happened and really be able to putting our best foot forward, as we go through our healing journey present day.
And this is parts therapy. Is it an acronym for something?
Parts work. It's not an acronym, but IFS is an acronym, and parts work falls underneath that.
And this is all for trauma therapy.
Yes, trauma therapy. Largely what I use it for.
And you said it goes back to different parts of your life.
Mhm.
Isn't that what therapists do anyway?
Yes, it's another intervention that a lot of therapists and a lot of clients really like to use because it normalizes the fact that sometimes we might have like a sad part, or we have an angry part, or a protective part that's showing up, and sometimes it can feel like, why am I feeling these different emotions at different points depending on what the trigger is or what's going on in my life right now. And it's because sometimes we have parts of ourselves that have unresolved wounds that we need to go back to and explore to revisit what's going on so that we can understand what's happening right now.
Hmm. And patients will specifically ask for this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty popular.
Okay. Well, you've said it before, so I believe you. So this is also important. But I want to give our audience a tangible hope. Kelsey, you work with Simran and mention specific therapies like EMDR and parts work. For our listeners who might be new to these terms, can you explain um, kind of the transformation that people will get by being able to be exposed to this kind of therapy?
Absolutely. So, of course, similar to a case study that we're talking about today, but this is a pretty common theme that I see within my practice, where people are going through intergenerational trauma. I know we've come on and we've talked about that topic before, where her mother's gone through traumas and she's kind of held these core beliefs and kind of passed that on to her daughter. And so, with EMDR and with parts work, sometimes it'll come out as they go through the therapy process of like, oh, is this my belief that I have about myself? Or is this messages that maybe my parent or my caregiver has taught me? Or are these messages that society has taught me about the way that women should operate or how women of color should navigate work situations or stress? And so EMDR and parts work does a really great job of that, of like, okay, what do I believe? And what are some things that were passed on to me or maybe impressed onto me by these external things that are going on with me?
Okay, great. And with the parts work, you helped, in this case study, Simret connect with her helpful daughter and unwavering caregiver roles. So, what does that internal conversation actually sound like? And what is the goal of giving these exhausted parts of her a voice?
Yes, yes. So part of identifying that there's, some underlying things that are going on is acknowledgement so that we can validate that those parts are showing up because they're very real, right? Like these are areas, these are parts that deserve a voice to be spoken to, that deserve to have space to express themselves in therapy. And so for a lot of my clients, like that time that they spend in therapy is the only time that they can really get it out. Because they're in spaces all day where they have to care for other people. And so when you give that space to be able to really process it, a lot of times just talking it out alone is really helpful, but doing the reprocessing around some of those parts can be really helpful too, so that they can feel like they can move forward in a healthy way.
Hmm. And so, what's the first step she can take, either at work or at home?
Yeah, so I would say coming to therapy and identifying like a plan to how to navigate that can be really helpful, because a lot of times it requires creating new boundaries with our work and our personal life that we've never done before. And sometimes for a lot of people that can be really scary, right? So sometimes it requires trial and error, like let me try to set this boundary and see how it goes. And a lot of times, even when we verbalize a boundary, sometimes you'll experience pushback, and that's where therapy can be really helpful, because it's like, oh, okay, I tried to set this boundary, it went as well as I thought it could go, but there's still some areas that can be tweaked. And your therapist can really help with that process of really affirming your boundaries, even after you've set them.
And I like Alicia earlier. You talked about your assistant. Big part of setting boundaries, being able to rest. Yes, that's actually a key thing, especially if you are a high performer and you have carry a lot of responsibilities. It's really you just can't do it all yourself.
Change the game when they let me have an assistant. um, I know our audience is probably thinking of many questions and a lot of thoughts flowing through their head from this conversation. So, for everyone listening, what is one small boundary you have set for yourself recently? Let's celebrate these wins together in the comments.
Yeah, and so let's talk about this ripple effect that Simrit taking these steps can have in the people in her lives. So, how does her healing give permission to her own daughter or even those in her community to live differently?
Absolutely. I think it brings up a good point of how sometimes women experience intergenerational trauma where they've learned messages that have like impacted them, but they can also be a change agent in creating intergenerational healing. So for her taking the steps to do therapy to try to relearn or unlearn some of these messages that she's heard can really springboard her daughter, setting healthy boundaries or standing up for herself, being a self advocate for herself, really learning how to rest and how to listen to her body more. It can really start that process of, informing the community too that it's okay for women of color to rest and for them to take care of themselves. And that's how that message continues to spread.
I think
Yeah, once again, were you saying
Oh,
something?
I was gonna say, I think it's also important too, like if you are a leader, when you tap into those spaces, you allow the people that work for you to also get rest and recharge and rebound. So if you are focused on that for yourself, you can
Mhm.
expect that and support that for those around you as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, actually, when I take this sabbatical, my assistant is taking one too.
Awesome.
Exactly.
As usual, Kelsey, we have learned a ton. For our listeners who are inspired by this conversation and they know they need to schedule an appointment with their therapist, what are some other books or websites or resources that you can recommend while they wait for that appointment?
Yeah, so I would say really just going into, let's see, I would look into therapy resources that relate to cognitive processing therapy or EMDR therapy. Emdria has a lot of great resources that you can check into, and I'll make sure to send you all the links so you can post that so you can learn more about psychoeducation about trauma, and ways that you can get help. Those are some main ones, and any other ones that I have, I'll definitely make sure to send the links over so we can include those for people to check out.
Awesome. And Kelsey, what are on the Melanin Initiative we have our TMI takeaways. So, what are three that you want to leave with every single listener here today about their own journey with healing?
Yeah, so I would say don't be afraid to get help. If you're noticing you're doing your body scan, like we talked about earlier, and you're noticing you're having some tension in your body, don't be afraid to reach out to a therapist. Sometimes finding the right therapist is like trying on shoes. We have to try a couple before we find the right fit. Um, Another thing I would say is trauma often hides behind high achievement. So if you are a high achiever and you feel like you're over functioning in some capacity, don't be afraid to acknowledge that. And, you know, sometimes I think the fear of other people finding out that we need help is a barrier sometimes. But we don't have to tell everyone that we're pursuing that rest or pursuing that therapy if we don't feel like we need to share that out. So definitely feel free to utilize that if you need to. And then healing requires space to name and heal cultural wounds sometimes as well. And so finding a therapist that can really help you navigate. racial or discrimination in the workplace is really important. And that's something that I definitely focus on in my practice. And I also help people find resources for that as well.
Yeah, I definitely respect people who might want to keep it to themselves, but I think as the high performer, you need help
Hmm.
to take that rest. And so when you tell other people that you're taking that rest, you need them to help you take that rest.
Yeah,
Otherwise, they will continue to call on you for all the things and you will continue to do all the things. Plus, you get to set an example of what it means to ask for help and to accept help that's being given in the way that people are best able to do that. And I find when you are a high performer, sometimes you have to tell people how to support you because you've already demonstrated that you can do so much by yourself. And so they don't actually know how to show up for you. And so it requires you to actually speak up and share what that actually looks like.
right.
It's just my own experience.
For sure. For sure.
So, how can people connect with you, Kelsey?
Yeah, so definitely follow me on social media, Kelsey Wilson PLC. As I mentioned before, our handles will be changing to Hela Psychotherapy soon. And then my website, kelseywplc.com. You can find me there as well.
And you'll be back to talk to us about parentification, right? And so we look forward to having you back. And thank you so much again for sharing your time and talent. And you are one of our award winners too, right? So this is a big time. It's a big deal whenever we get you grace our stage. Remember, everyone, you can email us your questions and show ideas to tmi.melanin@gmail.com. If you haven't already, you can still subscribe. Leave us a comment or two. Give us 5 stars on the Apple and Spotify podcast when you get there. Every time you interact with our platform by leaving comments, liking, subscribing, sharing, it shows the algorithm on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, that this information is important so that when people like you look for information like this, we'll show up higher in their search results. At the time of this recording, we release new videos every Sunday at noon Eastern on YouTube, LinkedIn, and I think we're just going to be staying there for now. And we drop the audio at 5 a.m. so that all our night shift friends can be the first to get something and not the last. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.